Hello, I have a book review for you this evening. This is by Carol Holiday called I Don't Know Who I Am Anymore, Restoring Your Identity Shattered by Grief and Loss. So this was sent to me to review. I get excited when I get a chance to, review a book that I see and I was like, oh, that's something I kind of need right now. That's something I would have bought on my own. So looking a little bit deeper into this, I'm going to bring up the website on my laptop in front of me here. And I'll leave the link down below so that you can see also. It says, for whomever whispers, I don't know who I am anymore, there is hope on the other side of grief. So grief and loss can encompass so many different things, topics, a variety. When I first saw the title, I kind of thought, okay, well, like major grief and loss, and even something small can feel major to us sometimes. But as I dug deeper into this, like it encompassed like so many things that I've either dealt with in the past or I'm currently dealing with now that a lot of people might not see as a major loss, but I'm really struggling to get through to the other side of it. And this has been amazing. It says, from shattered to restored, I Don't Know Who I Am Anymore is a guide through those moments when you wonder if the nightmare will ever end. A testament to the truth that God has good things in store for you, and a reminder that even your pain can become a beautiful part of who you are becoming. Inside this book, each chapter offers practical and spiritual companionship as you embrace the realities of sadness and faith. Reset your foundation in the image of God. That one's been a big one for me lately. Redirect doubts and despair toward a God-filled purpose. Realize how deep grief carves space for a deeper ability to love. Reclaim your value, your identity, and your incredible worth. It says, how do you survive when everything that gave meaning to your life suddenly disappears? Grief can spark the question, God, when will you see me? So just think over your own life, whether currently or in the past, like when has there been something that just disappeared from your life? That was such a huge part of your life. One that came to mind from the past and one that I'm going through currently. And so I remember, so this is about 10 years ago, and it was our 10-year high school reunion. And I had previously been at what I thought was my dream job. And it only lasted 3 years at it, and I got burnt out and I was like, okay, I gotta go. So I was in this weird in-between time, but that dream job was my identity. I'm like, this is what I do, and I felt important. So then I had, I resigned before I had a plan. I had a job that, didn't really mean much to me. And I found myself not wanting to go to my high school reunion because everybody's always all about, well, what do you do? Where do you work? It's always the first question. And I just felt like I don't have anything exciting or important to answer back to that. So it was that weird time of just okay, well, who am I? Obviously, my identity had nothing to do with the job. So fast forward to today. I mean, if you've been following me on my channel, you know that I, a couple years ago, left the church that we had been at for 15 years, and it's just not even gonna get into any of it. I can't anymore. I knew something wasn't right and had to get out of there. But you have an entire congregation telling you that you're the one that's wrong, and that just throws your identity for a loop. And there's that season of just grief and losing all those relationships and just still trying to process through that. And again, your story could be completely different type of grief and loss of, a divorce, a death, things like that. So I just highlighted some different parts in here that I'm going to share with you just to kind of give you a little taste of the book. In the introduction, it says, what happens when the prayers we so fervently pray go unanswered? What happens when the finances fail, when the husband doesn't come back, when the reputation is slandered and lies replace truth? What happens when you bury your beloved little boy? What do we, as followers of Jesus, do when we don't get our happily ever after ending? Something kind of unexpected in the book, but it's really cool. So she writes, the author, for 10 years, I owned a cooking school in a historic district of Southern California. I am not a professional cook, and our motto reflected that. We're not chefs, and neither are you. Said, when writing this book, I didn't expect to include recipes. That was not a plan of mine. By the way, this will not be the first time you see that phrase. But as I recalled specific stories about grief, certain dishes popped into my head, and it felt natural to include them. That just sort of happened, much like my story, and like so many serendipities along the way of its telling. I hope you enjoy these. So throughout the book, there are recipes, which I thought was really cool. Why, certainly, yes, you can include food in my healing journey any day. That's another part I highlighted here. Says, you still matter to God, even if you don't matter to that one certain person anymore. You still have purpose, even if your platform proves paltry. You aren't invisible, even if your nightmares or the date on your birth certificate tell you otherwise. God doesn't erase us, even if too often our worth seems wanting by society's standards. And although it sucks to endure such griefs, the reclamation of your celestial standing as beloved, as one of God's own, will be enough to help you draw another breath. It might even make sense one day. This part here just kind of reminded me again, like putting your identity in things that aren't your true identity. And it says, on the For the Love podcast with Jen Hatmaker, Amy Downs, a survivor of the Oklahoma City bombing, she was very honest about her struggles. She recounted her harrowing and courageous recovery from the ravages of that evil attack. I was in awe. She also candidly shared her current battle with identity in the face of loss. An accomplished triathlete, she found herself in a very dark place after a double knee replacement, asking, who am I if I am not a cyclist? I was in awe again. Those faulty connections don't die easily, even for the accomplished among us. But our DNA somehow seems to choreograph the dance we do with our dilemmas, or so I thought that day at lunch. Whatever its root, that was clearly my problem now. In a nutshell, I was finding value someplace other than where I was supposed to find it. This is the once deeply hidden buried treasure upon which you can build your recovery, acknowledging that a new life can exist without that other part of you that is now gone. Whatever the loss, whatever the grief, this can be your start. That's kind of the season I find myself in now. It took a long time. I desperately wanted to hold on to that church family. But it wasn't healthy for me to do so. Starting over of like, okay, well, who am I if I'm not on the worship team there? Who am I if I suddenly just lost a ton of like close relationships that I had for 15 years? Who am I? What am I worth? Here, speaking on divorce, how do you spend 35 years working diligently to merge, to become one flesh, only to have to rip it apart? Unlike a clean and sterile amputation, this was a muscle tear, shaggy and shredded, with suiny fibers raggedly reaching out and nerve cell ganglia writhing in vain, looking for their charged counterparts that apparently have altogether vanished. Therein lies the reality of raw grief. Thought that was a pretty decent word picture of just how messy grief is. It's not a clean cut at all. Chapter 11 is titled, I'm okay with where I am today. The person I once was is nowhere to be found, but I've learned to embrace this new version of me. It says, in case you hadn't noticed, everyone has an opinion about everything. From what to dip your french fries in, ketchup or garlic aioli, or Lord help you, nothing at all. Cryptocurrency versus gold, cats versus dogs. Just throw out a topic and stand back. And there will be opinions about you and your progress and your decisions and your choices. Let me tell you. Protect that progress by employing strategies to strengthen. Be okay with where you are today. Start with that one. Be patient with yourself. Healing isn't a bullet train streaking across the landscape. Aren't you over it yet? You'll get that one plenty of times. I've gotten that one plenty of times. The exact question came from my ex, especially effective in stoking the shame and spreading the doubt. Much like fertilizer, that stinks. One doesn't get over grief. We learn to wrestle with it, grow in respect for its presence, and in that process, reach a level of acceptance. Sometimes we wait not for change, but for the grace to accept the status quo. Learning to set boundaries with people who think that you should be over it is an art form that requires a planned response, which is helpful to create before you need it. And I'm reading this and sharing this part because that is exactly something. This past weekend I had a huge craft show, and I'd been stressing for weeks that I was going to see people, let's just say, that I didn't want to see, because talking with my counselor, I was just like, I don't know what to say to them anymore. I don't know how I'm supposed to react. I don't really know how I'm supposed to like feel about them. And we did. I planned out, like, okay, if I see anyone from like this list of people, like, I already knew how I was going to respond to that situation. And that was helpful. This chapter will suggest some of those strategies. It says, be wary of those who don't understand that a hurting heart has never been healed with a theological debate. Nothing brings out the critics and debate teams faster than social media, so think twice about what you choose to share publicly. I should have taken that advice. If in doubt about how much to share, go with the old design adage upon which I've relied for years: less is more. So what do you say to the person who offers an unsolicited opinion about your situation or ventures an unwelcome query? Here are some sample questions and ideas for answers. This book is so helpful in that area. So to answer the question, aren't you over it yet? There's some helpful responses. It says, I'm not sure over it is the right description. I'm processing things and I'm really proud of my progress, and some other appropriate responses. She says, offer some responses with a bit of your personality or humor. I might have said things like this. This is like one I would go with. I cannot lie. I'm hoping to be miserable for the rest of my days, and I hope you'll support me in that. I would totally say that to somebody. Answer the question, how are you doing? And that was one of the questions that I was like afraid of someone asking, like someone from that congregation that like knew all this stuff come up to me after like not speaking for however long, be like, how are you doing? And I've like, my honest response would just be like, I don't know how to answer that. How are you? So one of the appropriate responses says, well, I've really taken the time to work on myself in a meaningful way. Things are different, but that's okay. New normals sometimes take time. The last one she offers. Again, this would be mine. Fantastic. I'm thinking this might be a good time to join the circus. You can also follow up your reply with a simple redirect, like, oh, would you look at that? Buy 5 toilet paper rolls and the 6th is free. Scripting and role-playing are always good strategies, but you may need to enlist sturdier ones. Here's a recipe. Not over it yet, meatloaf. So I think here's the final chapter here, called The Nightmare Ends. And it says, next, that's what this chapter is about. I hope that you're feeling more ready for that word. I know I am. Next, the space where you leave the angst of grief in the dust and view your world with new frames, new glasses, new insight, and expectation of redeemed purposes. Next, where you discard the names that labeled you worthless and instead wear monikers like beloved, monogrammed on your heart and tattooed on your palm to read every time you stretch your arms to the sky first thing in the morning. Next, where you abandon unhealthy distractions and enlist proper ones to fill space and time with peace and a purpose. I'm looking forward to next. And I'm just going to read the last couple sentences of the book, just because that's how I want to leave. I want to leave this with you. You are valued. You are esteemed. You are seen. You are named. You are renewed. You are restored. You are daughter, born of dust of the earth, spittle, and molded clay. So if you find yourself resonating with any of that, again, I'll leave the link down below. Carol Holiday, I Don't Know Who I Am Anymore. So thanks for tuning in for this book review, and I'll see you next time. Bye.